Welcome to Fear Spiral. They say driving at night is dangerous. The dark holds more fear than the day, more spooks than the light. And sometimes, it's not the road you should fear, but who sits beside you. A man is driving home late at night. Beside him in the passenger seat sits his wife. She'd been unusually quiet for the entire drive, staring straight ahead with wide eyes, not speaking, not moving. The man glances at her, confused by her silence. He reaches out to touch her, but she flinches away from him. "What's wrong?" he asks, his voice laced with concern. "Are you all right?" She doesn't answer. She continues to stare straight ahead, her eyes fixed on some distant point on the road. The man's unease grows. He tries to make conversation, anything to break the silence, but his wife remains unresponsive. Her silence is deafening, her stillness unnerving. Just when the man's anxiety is reaching its peak, his wife suddenly speaks. "Stop the car," she whispers, her voice hoarse, as if unused for a long time. The man, startled by her sudden outburst, slams on the brakes. The car skids to a halt on the side of the empty road. "Why did you make me stop?" the man asks, his heart pounding in his chest. His wife opens the door and steps out into the darkness. She stands for a moment, her silhouette a dark shadow against the moonlit sky. Then she turns, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the street lamp. The man's breath catches in his throat. Her eyes, they're not her eyes. They're empty sockets, black pits, devoid of life. Her skin, once warm and alive, is now cold and ashen. Her lips, once soft and rosy, are now pale and lifeless. The man screams, a primal, gut-wrenching sound that echoes in the empty road. He scrambles out of the car, his hands outstretched, his face ashen. "No, no, no," he whispers, his voice trembling. He lunges for his wife, but she's gone. One moment she's there, the next she's vanished. The man collapses to his knees, his wife nowhere to be seen. The road is empty, the car silent, the street lamp casting long, eerie shadows. The man sits there for a long time, the silence broken only by the distant hum of traffic. When he finally looks up, the sky is just beginning to lighten. The sun, a pale disk on the horizon, promises a new day. But for this man, the night has been a terrifying reminder that sometimes the greatest fears are the ones that sit right beside us, waiting in the darkness for their moment to strike. Daniel, 27, is driving on a lonely highway in the middle of nowhere. It's 2:47 a.m. and he's just about to pass the witching hour. The radio in his car flickers between stations. Static fills the speakers. The road is empty. No lights, no traffic, nothing. Just the sound of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. He'd been traveling for months, working as a traveling salesman, and the monotony of the road had finally caught up with him. All the faces, all the places, all the small talk had drained him. He was on his way back from a business trip, a long one, and he was exhausted. All he wanted to do was get home, crawl into bed and sleep for a week. As he drove, the fatigue began to pull at him, his eyelids growing heavy, his vision blurring. The bright headlights of his car cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty road ahead of him, but in the distance, he saw a faint glow, a glimmer of light that wasn't there before. Hope surged through him. Maybe there was a gas station or a diner, maybe even a house with friendly faces and warm smiles. Anything to break the suffocating silence and the loneliness that had become his constant companion. As he drew closer, the light grew brighter, taking on a more defined shape. It was a building, old and dilapidated, with paint peeling from its walls and windows boarded up, the faint glow emanating from within, casting long, distorted shadows that danced ominously in the darkness. A shiver ran down his spine, but he pushed on, his foot pressing harder on the gas pedal. The engine roared in protest as he sped past the building, but he didn't care. He didn't want to stop, didn't want to see what else might be out there in the darkness. He just wanted to keep driving, to put as much distance between himself and that building as possible. But then he heard it, a voice, raspy and ancient, whispering his name. "Daniel, come inside." The voice was like nails on a chalkboard, grating and harsh, yet strangely compelling. He tried to shake it off, to dismiss it as a trick of his exhausted mind. But the voice persisted, growing louder, more insistent. "Daniel, come inside." He glanced in his rearview mirror, half expecting to see the building and the darkness closing in on him. But there was nothing behind him, only the empty road stretching endlessly into the darkness. And then he saw it again, the faint glow of the building, now closer, now brighter, seeping into his mind like a dark cloud. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his heart pounding against his ribs. What was he waiting for? The voice whispered again, this time with a hint of urgency. Daniel, please come inside. And as the voice echoed in his ears, he felt the darkness closing in around him, enveloping him like a shroud. The last thing he remembered was the sound of his own screams swallowed by the endless darkness. Daniel was driving home from work. It was late and the roads were empty. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a person at the roadside. It looked like a man in a hat waving for help. Daniel hesitated. He really should keep driving, but something made him stop. When he got closer, he saw that it was a young woman in pale clothes. She was hunched over as if defeated, head down, not making a sound. Daniel stopped the car and asked, "Are you okay? Do you need some help?" The woman slowly lifted her head. Her face was white as snow, her eyes dark and deep like a bottomless pit. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine, but he couldn't look away. The woman silently got into the back seat of his car. Daniel started to feel uneasy, but he asked her, "Where are you headed? I can drive you there," thinking that maybe she didn't know the area or something. But the woman still didn't answer. She just kept staring straight ahead with those bottomless eyes of hers. Daniel felt a growing sense of dread, but he tried to shake it off. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. But then the woman suddenly turned around and looked at him. Daniel gasped. Her face was pale, as if she had no blood in it. Her eyes were wide and seemed to glow in the darkness. And then she opened her mouth, but instead of saying anything, she just kept staring at him. An unsettling silence filled the car. Daniel could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, as if lead was holding him down. Daniel struggled to break free from her gaze, but it was no use. It felt like an eternity, yet only a few seconds had passed. Then, just as suddenly as she had turned around, the woman turned back again, facing forward, still without saying a word. Daniel, still frozen in place, managed to utter, "Are you sure you don't want to tell me where you're going?" The woman remained silent, her eyes fixed on some distant point ahead. Daniel, feeling a mix of fear and pity, decided to take her home. As the car drove on, the silence in the car was deafening. Daniel's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Who was this woman, and why was she at the side of the road at this hour? Finally, they arrived at the woman's destination. She got out of the car without saying a word of thanks or even acknowledging Daniel's presence. As she walked away, her pale clothes billowing in the wind, Daniel couldn't help but shiver. Was it just his imagination, or did the woman's form seem to fade away like a ghost? Daniel shook off the eerie thought and decided to go home, but he couldn't help but feel that something, or someone, had just entered his life. And it wasn't a feeling he wanted to experience again. The end. Daniel gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white as he focused on the road ahead. Beside him sat an empty car seat, the only sound the hum of the engine and the soft rock music playing on the radio. He stole a glance at it every few seconds, hoping to see her, expecting to see her, but all he saw was the seat. The same seat that had been empty for the past hour. An hour ago they'd been driving along this very same road, laughing, singing, making plans for the future. Then she had leaned over to grab his hand, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she told him about a new cafe she wanted to visit. And then she was gone. 1 minute she was there, the next she wasn't. The car seat was cold where she had been sitting. Her phone was on the passenger seat, still playing the song they had been listening to. He pulled over on the side of the road, his heart pounding, his mind racing. Had she really vanished into thin air? Was this some kind of sick joke? He got out of the car and walked around, calling her name, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. No response. He checked the back seat again, his eyes searching frantically for any sign of her. There was nothing. He got back into the car, his hands shaking as he tried to call her phone. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again, and again, and again, each unanswered call tearing at his soul. He had to get to her, he had to find her. He started the engine and slammed his foot on the accelerator, speeding down the road, the wind whipping through his hair, the trees blurring past him. He drove past the cafe, the one she had wanted to visit. It was just a small, unassuming building with a couple of tables outside. He stopped the car and got out, his eyes scanning the area, half expecting to see her sitting at one of the tables. When he turned back to the road, he noticed a man walking towards him. The man's face was etched with concern. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice kind. Daniel hesitated, unsure what to say. I was just driving past and I think I may have hit a pedestrian," he stammered, his heart sinking as he realized what he had done. As he turned to leave, he caught his own face in the rearview mirror, his breath hitched in his throat. In the reflection, he could see the man's concerned face inches away from his, but that wasn't what made him gasp. it was what was behind that face. There, sitting in the back seat, was the woman he had been searching for. She was there staring at him, her face pale, her eyes wide. But it wasn't her face that was the most disturbing. It was the fact that it was covered in a thick layer of fog, as if the window had steamed up. How could she be there but not breathing? Her body slumped over in a way that was both horrifying and familiar. Daniel stumbled back, his mind refusing to accept what he was seeing. Was she dead? Had he killed her? Or was this something else? Something more sinister? The questions pounded in his head, echoing the frantic beat of his heart. As he stared at the back seat, his reflection staring back at him, he knew one thing for sure. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. I never should have listened to that old man. I knew I should have kept driving. I knew I should have kept driving. It was late at night when I first heard the rumors. This highway is cursed. Years ago, a girl died here in a hit-and-run, and ever since then drivers report seeing a silent passenger sitting in the back seat of their car. A hitchhiker who only appears at night, a ghost who only appears in the rearview mirror when you're re-driving alone on this road after midnight. And if you let her ride with you, you may not survive till morning. Now, I didn't see or hear anything. The old man just kept rambling about how dangerous this stretch of road is. How many accidents happen here every year, how many lives are lost. I tried to change the subject, but he wouldn't stop. He just kept going on and on about how I shouldn't be driving after dark, how I should turn around and go back. But I didn't listen, I just kept driving. And then I saw her. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light. A shadow in the corner of my eye. But when I glanced over, there she was, sitting in the back seat, a woman in a white dress, her face pale and lifeless. I slammed on the brakes and turned to look for her again, but she was gone. I told myself it was just a dream, a figment of my imagination, but the image of her in the dress, it was burned into my mind. I started to drive again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw her there, sitting in the back seat, staring at me with empty eyes. I tried to ignore her, but the longer I drove, the more intense her stare became. It was as if she was trying to reach out and grab me, her cold, dead fingers digging into my flesh. I don't know how long I drove. Time seemed to stand still as I raced down the empty highway, the silence broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. Then suddenly, just as quickly as she had appeared, the woman was gone, and I was left alone in the car, my heart pounding in my chest, the echo of her laughter ringing in my ears. When I finally got home, I told my friends what had happened, but they just laughed and said it was just a nightmare. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I know that if I ever drive on that highway again, I may not be lucky enough to escape her grasp. The car starts losing power, the lights begin to flicker, and in the back of the car, behind Daniel, a cold air blows. The radio switches on by itself. A distorted voice saying, "You shouldn't have stopped," echoes through the car. Daniel panics and looks in the mirror again. The passenger that was sitting in the front seat is now in the back, staring at him with hollow eyes. The old man turns to Daniel, his face a mask of malice. He opens his mouth, revealing teeth that are far too sharp and long. Then he lunges. Daniel screams and swerves the car into the other lane. The old man crashes through the windshield, his body disappearing into the forest. As the car skids to a halt, Daniel slams on the brakes. He looks in the mirror, his hands shaking. The passenger seat is empty. He lets out a shaky breath, thinking he's finally alone. But then he hears it again, that distorted voice whispering, "You shouldn't have stopped." It seems to be coming from everywhere and nowhere. He throws his head back, eyes closed, willing the terror to go away. When he opens his eyes, he sees it. On the dashboard, the radio is tuned to a frequency that isn't broadcasting anything but static. Static that sounds like a voice saying, "You shouldn't have stopped." He remembers the old man's words from earlier, the only way to stop the voice is to keep moving. So he does. He drives 4 hours, the voice following him, taunting him. Just as he begins to think he might go crazy, the voice says, "You shouldn't have stopped," for the last time, and the static on the radio fades away. Finally, silence. But it's a silence that screams in his ears. In the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, Daniel stops at a gas station to fill up. As he walks into the bathroom, he sees it, a pair of hollow eyes staring at him from the mirror. They're the same eyes that belonged to the old man. He screams and runs, the old man's laughter echoing behind him. Daniel runs until he collapses, the image of those hollow eyes burned into his mind. When he wakes up, it's morning, the sun is shining, birds are tweeting. It's a beautiful day, but then he hears it, the old man's voice, closer now. "You shouldn't have stopped." Daniel looks around, confused. The old man steps out from behind a tree, a wicked grin on his face. "I told you," he says. "You shouldn't have stopped." He lunges at Daniel, who screams and runs. And that's when Daniel wakes up, sitting in his car in the parking lot of the gas station. It's morning, the sun is shining, he's safe. He looks around, sees the old man, and then smiles. Because today is the day Daniel decides to stop running. Daniel screams, slams on the brakes. The girl finally speaks. She says, "Why didn't anyone stop that night? Why didn't they save me?" Her face is twisted in pain. Blood is dripping down her arm. Her skin is torn and she's pulling at the wheel, forcing the car toward the edge of the road. "Daniel, I'm trying to help you. I want to take you to the hospital." She shakes her head, her eyes wild with fear. She screams, "They took my baby. Why didn't you stop them? Why didn't you save me?" Daniel, his voice cracking, "I didn't know. I only saw you today for the first time. I swear, please, I want to help, but you have to let me." She looks at him, her eyes blazing with hatred. She spits at him. "You're all the same. You're all a part of it. You could have stopped it. You could have saved me, but you didn't. You let them take my baby. You let them hurt me." Daniel, tears streaming down his face, reaches out to her. "Please, I don't want to hurt you. I want to help you." She slaps him, a wild look in her eyes. She screams at him, "You should have stopped it. You should have saved me. You should have killed them all." The car is now at the edge of the road. She lunges at the gear stick, forcing the car into reverse. "Daniel, no, don't, please. I can still help you." She throws him a wild look. She's crying, her face streaked with blood and dirt. She screams, "You can't help me. You can't save me. It's too late." The car crashes through the barriers and overturns. Daniel screams her name. He runs toward the car, crashing through the glass, pulling her out of the wreckage. She looks at him, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. She whispers, "It hurts. It hurts so much." Daniel, holding her close, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She looks at him, her eyes blazing with anger. She whispers, "You're all the same. You're all a part of it. No one stops, no one helps, no one saves." Her eyes roll back in her head and she goes limp in his arms. Daniel cradling her, "Don't leave me. Please, please stay with me." She's gone. Fade in, drenched in sweat, Daniel crashes his car into a ditch. The vehicle flips over, sending glass and metal flying everywhere. The screen fades to black. Silence. Then, just as abruptly, a piercing screech wakes us from the silence. A woman's voice screams, "No, no, 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 no." As the sun rises, we see the mangled remains of Daniel's car. A lone police officer walks towards it, his face grim. He shines his flashlight into the car and makes a horrifying discovery. Daniel's body slumped over the steering wheel, eyes wide with terror, mouth agape as if screaming into the abyss. The officer rushes to his side and kneels down, confirming the driver's side window was shattered. Daniel isn't breathing. His eyes are glazed over. He's dead. But that's not the only body in the car. In the back seat next to him is another corpse, a female. She's slumped over, her head lolling to the side. Her hair is long and tangled, covering the right side of her rotting face. What appears to be a tattered wedding ring is on her left hand. And the condition of her body tells us she's been dead for decades. The officer stands up, takes a deep breath and radios for backup. He needs to get this information to the station ASAP. As more officers arrive, they begin the grim task of extracting the bodies from the wreckage. The female corpse is placed on a stretcher and covered with a sheet. The officer who found them walks past the photographers and reporters, their flashbulbs going off like a death rattle. He walks into the station house, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. He runs a hand through his already disheveled hair. This is gonna make for one hell of a morning report. He walks into the captain's office and sits down heavily in the chair. "We got a double homicide on our hands," he says, his voice raspy. "One of the bodies was in the backseat of the car, sir. I think she's been dead for decades." The captain, a burly man with a handlebar mustache, steeples his fingers. "What about the driver?" he asks. The officer shrugs. "No ID on him. He was killed on impact. I don't think he lived much longer than the lady in the back seat." The captain nods, scribbling something on a notepad. "All right, get the forensics team down there. And he pauses. Put out an APB on this car. See if any of our burglary teams have had a recent jewelry heist. We might have a link." The officer nods, then leaves the office. As he walks away, we see the captain's eyes narrow. He looks at the picture of the female corpse on his desk. Specifically the one body part that wasn't decayed, her wedding ring. A cold smile slowly spreads across his face. "Looks like we got ourselves a mystery." Fade out. They say there's no greater torment than that of the living. To be alive and conscious, yet to be utterly alone, trapped in a world where everyone has moved on except you. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And let me tell you the story of a hitchhiker who became a ghost, haunting the roads even after death. It all started with whispers among the villagers. Villagers gathered in groups, whispering, "Another victim, she found her passenger again." The rumors spread like wildfire through the sleepy town. Every few months, the silent passenger finds a ride and claims a soul. Some said it was a beautiful woman, others said it was an emaciated, rotting corpse, but all agreed she rode the highways in the backseat of a nondescript car and preyed on unsuspecting drivers. Fear gripped the townspeople as they shared stories of the hitchhiker ghost. The legend goes that if you picked her up, she'd sit silently in the back seat until you reached your destination. Then as you slept, she would crawl into your bed and steal your breath, leaving you in the morning, cold and dead. Years passed and the eerie tale of the hitchhiking ghost became a local legend. A cautionary tale told to frightened children who were out past dusk. Parents warned their kids to stay away from the old highway and the rusted gas station where the hitchhiker was said to have first appeared. But the legend didn't end there. Or no, it continued to evolve, growing more terrifying with each retelling. People started seeing her everywhere: the ghost hitchhiker, the girl in the faded denim jacket, and the tattered red dress, her long hair flowing behind her like a tattered black banner. And then there were the sightings at night, the fleeting glimpse of a woman standing by the side of the road, thumb outstretched, waiting for a ride. Some said she looked sad, her eyes filled with a deep unending sorrow. Others said she seemed angry, her face twisted in a snarl, revealing teeth that were sharp and long like fangs. As the years rolled on, the locals came to believe that the ghost hitchhiker wasn't just a restless spirit, but a malevolent one, a demon that fed on the fear and despair of mortals. They spoke of a darkness that clung to her, a palpable aura of evil that seeped into your bones and froze your blood. But perhaps the most terrifying part of the legend was the claim that the ghost hitchhiker wasn't just a figment of the locals' imagination. Every full moon, when the veil between the worlds was at its thinnest, she would walk the earth, seeking new victims to add to her growing legion of souls. So if you ever find yourself driving down a deserted highway, the engine of your car growing cold in the still night air, and you see a woman standing by the side of the road, thumb outstretched, hitchhiking, in the flickering light of your headlights, remember the legend of the ghost hitchhiker and don't pick her up. For once you do, you may never escape her icy grip. That's all for today. See you next time. If you ever drive alone at night, and I know you do because you're never with me, and someone waves at you for help, remember this story, because sometimes the scariest passenger is the one who never speaks. There was a woman who was driving home from a party. She had a couple drinks, but she was fine to drive. It was late, like 3 a.m. late, and she was on a dark, deserted road when suddenly her car started to sputter and cough. She pulled over to the side of the road and turned on her hazard lights. Within a minute or two, a man was jogging up to her car, and when he got close enough, she could see that he was holding something in his hands. He looked at her and he was like, "Hey, can you give me a ride? I just need a ride to the next town over." And she was like, "Yeah, sure." But then she noticed that he was holding this big metal pipe in his hand. It almost looked like a crow skull, if you know what I mean. And she was like, are you sure you wouldn't rather wait for a cop car? You seem pretty sketchy right now." And he said, No, I'd rather go with you." So she let him in. Now, she starts to drive, but he makes her drive really slow. Like under the speed limit slow, which was weird, but whatever. As they're driving, she could see that he wasn't actually making eye contact with her. Like whenever she glanced over at him, he would look down at his lap. So finally, she was like, "Okay, this is weird. Let me Google this guy and pull up his mugshot." And it turns out he was wanted for like 12 different felonies. At this point, she's like, "Oh my god, I gotta get away from this guy." So she starts to speed up, trying to get away from him. When they finally get to the next town, she stops at a gas station, and he tells her that that's where he wants to get out. But while he's getting out, she locks her doors and she starts to fill up her tank. When she gets back in the car, she sees that he's sitting there and he's staring at her. And she was like, "Get out of my car right now." And he says, "No, you're gonna drive me back to my truck." And then she was like, "Nope." And then she starts to drive away. He opens the door and jumps out of the car, and then he starts running after her. She hits the gas and she finally gets away from him. She calls the cops and she tells them everything that happened. They find the guy, they arrest him, put him in the back of the cop car, and then they take him to jail. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. It really helps me out.